On December 1st, 2010, Staff Sergeant Nathan Paet, a dedicated military man stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, was brutally murdered outside his home in a shocking betrayal orchestrated by his wife, Michelle. That night, Nathan had woken up late for his night shift, rushing to get ready. As he prepared to leave, gunshots shattered the stillness. Michelle and their children ran to the garage, only to find Nathan bleeding heavily. Despite Michelle's frantic 911 call and attempts to save him, Nathan succumbed to his injuries. What appeared to be a tragic, random act of violence quickly spiraled into a deeper investigation. The police found no signs of robbery and neighbors reported a suspicious vehicle near the house. Michelle's unusual behavior during questioning led detectives to uncover a dark secret. She had been having an affair with Michael Rodriguez, a man with a criminal past. But further digging revealed a chilling plot. Financial difficulties and a hefty life insurance policy on Nathan had driven Michelle and Michael to conspire to murder him for money. Michelle, Michael, and two others, Corey Alexis Hawkins and Jessica Austin, had carefully planned Nathan's murder. Michael was the shooter, and Corey assisted in carrying out the plan. Jessica and her friend Shannon played minor roles, with Jessica cleaning up evidence and Shannon providing an alibi for Michael. After the murder, the group fled, destroying evidence and trying to cover their tracks. However, phone records and witness testimonies soon unraveled their conspiracy. A week after Nathan's death, Michelle and her accomplices were arrested. The trials dragged on for years, with all the conspirators eventually pleading guilty. Michael and Corey were sentenced to life in prison without parole, while Michelle avoided the death penalty by pleading guilty to first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. She, too, was sentenced to life in prison. Jessica received a lighter sentence due to her limited involvement. The aftermath of Nathan's death left his family and community shattered. His 4 children were left without their father, and the knowledge that their mother had orchestrated the murder deepened their trauma. Nathan's grieving family, including his mother, Carmelita, and brother Eric, struggled to come to terms with both his death and Michelle's betrayal. While some, like Carmelita, found peace through forgiveness, others could not forgive Michelle for her actions. Nathan's death was a devastating loss to his loved ones and the Air Force community, where he had been respected for his service and dedication. His murder, driven by greed and orchestrated by the very person who should have loved him most, remains a haunting reminder of the depths of human betrayal. Brian Taylor was an 18-year-old senior at East Jefferson High School in Metairie, Louisiana, known for his passion for cars and his dedication to caring for his blind grandmother, Mabel. Despite his youth, Brian juggled school, a part-time job at a local garage, and the responsibility of looking after his grandmother with ease. He was dating Lisa Grant, also 18, and the two seemed inseparable, often dreaming of a future together after high school. But beneath the surface, Brian was entangled in a dark secret that would lead to his tragic and violent death. Brian had been having an affair with Lisa's 43-year-old mother, Pamela Gerard. Pamela, an attractive and successful businesswoman, ran a multi-level marketing company and had a strained relationship with her daughter. The affair, which weighed heavily on Brian, complicated his life in ways he hadn't anticipated, setting the stage for a violent and irreversible tragedy. On the morning of August 12, 2021, the quiet neighborhood of Metairie was shattered. Mabel, sensing something was wrong after not hearing Brian move around the house, called her neighbor, Alice Dupre, for help. Alice, a retired nurse, rushed over to check on Brian. As she entered the house, she felt an unsettling chill, and the strange metallic scent in the air led her to Brian's bedroom. There she discovered Brian's lifeless body, lying in a pool of blood, brutally stabbed multiple times with his eyes nearly gouged out. Horrified, Alice called 911. The police and paramedics arrived swiftly, finding the small house on West Metairie Avenue, now the site of a gruesome murder. Detective Michael Duvall, a seasoned investigator, led the investigation alongside Detective Renee Martinez. They quickly realized the gravity of the crime and the devastating impact it would have on the close-knit community. As the investigation unfolded, detectives uncovered the shocking affair between Brian and Pamela, which had spiraled out of control. Pamela, driven by jealousy and anger, had confronted Brian about the relationship, and the situation had escalated into violence. The revelation of the affair, coupled with the brutal nature of Brian's murder, left the community in disbelief. Brian's tragic death marked the loss of a promising young man whose life was cut short by a secret relationship and a violent betrayal. The once quiet and peaceful neighborhood of Metairie would never be the same, as residents struggled to come to terms with the horrific events that had unfolded behind closed doors. Brian Taylor was an 18-year-old living in the quiet suburb of Metairie, Louisiana, just outside of New Orleans. A senior at East Jefferson High School, Brian was known for his love of cars and his natural talent for auto mechanics. He dreamed of opening his own repair shop one day, spending countless hours tinkering with engines in his driveway. Despite his young age, Brian carried heavy responsibilities, caring for his blind grandmother, Mabel, with whom he lived. Neighbors admired him for his maturity, kindness, and unwavering commitment to his family. For the past 2 years, Brian had been in a serious relationship with Lisa Grant, also 18. The two seemed inseparable, often seen around town together, whether grabbing a bite at Café du Monde or simply enjoying each other's company. Their friends and family believed they were destined for a long, happy life together, often talking about getting married after high school. But lurking beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect relationship was a dark and dangerous secret, one that would soon lead to devastating consequences. Unknown to everyone, Brian had been having an affair with Lisa's mother, Pamela Girard, a 43-year-old woman who owned a multi-level marketing company called Beauty Buys. Pamela was attractive and successful, but she had a complicated relationship with her daughter, often vying for attention and praise, especially when it came to men. What started as a secret affair between Pamela and Brian quickly spiraled out of control, culminating in a violent and horrific tragedy. On the morning of August 12, 2021, Brian's grandmother, Mabel, became worried when she didn't hear Brian moving around the house as usual. Unable to see, she called out to him but received no response. Sensing something was wrong, she called her neighbor, Alice Dupree, for help. Alice, a retired nurse, rushed over, only to be greeted by an eerie silence and the overwhelming stench of blood. When she entered Brian's bedroom, she found his lifeless body lying in a pool of blood, brutally stabbed and nearly mutilated. A kitchen knife, the murder weapon, lay on the floor beside him. Shocked and horrified, Alice immediately called 911. Within minutes, the Metairie Police Department arrived, led by seasoned investigator Detective Michael Duval and his partner, Detective Renee Martinez. Together, they surveyed the gruesome scene. The once cozy home had been turned into a blood-soaked nightmare. The sheer violence of the attack suggested a crime of passion, and it was clear that this was no random act of violence. The detectives began their investigation by canvassing the neighborhood and questioning those closest to Brian, starting with Pamela Girard. When they brought Pamela in for questioning, she appeared composed, dressed impeccably as always. But when the detectives pressed her about the affair, her polished facade began to crumble. Initially, Pamela denied everything, but when confronted with explicit text messages between her and Brian, she broke down in tears, confessing to the affair. "He was my angel," she cried, though she swore she had nothing to do with his murder. Pamela wasn't the only suspect. The detectives also turned their attention to Lisa Grant, Brian's girlfriend. When questioned, Lisa appeared devastated, her eyes swollen with tears. She explained how just days before his death, she had discovered the affair between her mother and Brian. The betrayal had shattered her world, but Lisa maintained that despite her heartbreak, she had nothing to do with Brian's murder. She claimed to have been at a friend's house the night of the murder, but her alibi was shaky, and her emotional state made the detectives suspicious. The third person of interest was Robert Girard, Pamela's husband and Lisa's father. Robert, a well-known attorney in the area, had always prided himself on maintaining a picture-perfect family image. But behind closed doors, Robert had long suspected that his wife's behavior was inappropriate. He had his suspicions about her relationships with other men, but he had chosen to turn a blind eye, hoping to avoid any scandal. When confronted by the detectives, Robert claimed he knew nothing of the affair until after Brian's death and insisted he had been at work the night of the murder. As the investigation progressed, the detectives uncovered more disturbing details about Pamela's life. They received a tip from an anonymous caller who claimed that Pamela had been hiding something far darker than just an affair. Following up on this lead, the detectives searched Pamela's office at Beauty Buys, where they made a shocking discovery. Behind a locked door, they found a makeshift altar dedicated to Brian, complete with candles, trinkets, and explicit photographs of him. Pamela's obsession with Brian had clearly gone beyond a simple affair it had turned into a dangerous fixation. But the investigation didn't stop there. As they dug deeper into Pamela's business dealings, they uncovered that beauty buys was a front for a fraudulent scheme. Pamela had been exploiting vulnerable women, convincing them to invest large sums of money in her beauty products, only to leave them in financial ruin. This added another layer to Pamela's character. She was not only a woman driven by obsession, but also someone willing to manipulate and exploit others for personal gain. On August 21, 2021, the police arrested Pamela at her home. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, she maintained her innocence throughout the interrogation. However, with the affair exposed and the disturbing findings in her office, the detectives were confident they had their killer. The trial for Pamela Gerard's murder of Brian Taylor began on November 8, 2021, drawing significant media attention. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Mark Tremblay, argued that Pamela had murdered Brian in a jealous rage when he tried to end their affair. The defense, led by attorney Charles Lemoyne, attempted to paint Pamela as a loving mother who had been wrongfully accused, even suggesting that Lisa might have committed the crime. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning a verdict. Pamela Gerard was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Brian's family, the verdict brought a sense of justice, but the pain of losing him remained. The trial also exposed Pamela's fraudulent business, leading to further investigations into beauty buys. Pamela Gerard's downfall was a tragic reminder of how obsession, betrayal, and manipulation can tear lives apart. Brian Taylor's bright future was stolen in a senseless act of violence, and the community of Metairie would never forget the devastating consequences of Pamela's dark secrets. In recent years, juvenile crime has risen globally, with an alarming increase in violence among school-aged children. Many incidents involve peers, and some result in horrifying tragedies where victims end up in the hospital, permanently injured, or worse, lose their lives. Often, these violent acts are driven by the desire to assert dominance, power, and the belief that they can act without consequence. Unfortunately, many countries have lenient laws for young offenders, reinforcing this notion. Today's case centers on Anne Marin, a French girl whose tragic death at the hands of a fellow high school student shocked the nation. Both Anne and her attacker attended a prestigious school where such an event seemed unimaginable. However, as the investigation unfolded, it was revealed that this wasn't the first time the perpetrator had attacked a girl. His wealthy parents had previously covered up his violent behavior, even moving him to another prestigious school in a different city to hide his past. Some argue that teenage aggression is a form of protest during the turbulent years of self-discovery, but in this case, the boy's cruelty stemmed from a deeper lack of empathy and disregard for others' pain. He posed a significant threat to society and eventually became only the second teenager in French history to receive a life sentence. Anne Marin, born on November 26, 1999, in Paris, was the beloved only child of Paula and Frederick Marin. Growing up in a well-off family, Anne was adored by her parents, who gave her everything she wanted. From a young age, she was pampered with clothes from high-end stores, vacations by the sea, and the latest toys and gadgets. Anne was a lively, social, and creative child, with a passion for music, movies, and dreams of becoming a film director. Academically, she excelled and was recognized for her high potential, though she sometimes struggled with laziness and a lack of focus. However, at age 13, Anne began to associate with a bad crowd, which negatively impacted her studies and behavior. She started smoking, drinking alcohol, and skipping school. Her concerned parents, who avoided using harsh discipline, repeatedly tried talking to her in hopes she would change. Although Anne would promise to improve and distance herself from these negative influences, no real change occurred. Ultimately, her tragic fate was sealed by a classmate whose violent tendencies had gone unchecked for too long. Her death stands as a tragic reminder of the consequences of leniency in cases of severe juvenile delinquency. In recent years, juvenile crime has risen globally, with an alarming increase in violence among school-aged children. Many incidents involve peers, and some result in horrifying tragedies where victims end up in the hospital, permanently injured, or worse, lose their lives. Often these violent acts are driven by the desire to assert dominance, power, and the belief that they can act without consequence. Unfortunately, Many countries have lenient laws for young offenders, reinforcing this notion. Today's case centers on Anne Marin, a French girl whose tragic death at the hands of a fellow high school student shocked the nation. Both Anne and her attacker attended a prestigious school where such an event seemed unimaginable. However, as the investigation unfolded, it was revealed that this wasn't the first time the perpetrator had attacked a girl. His wealthy parents had previously covered up his violent behavior, even moving him to another prestigious school in a different city to hide his past. Some argue that teenage aggression is a form of protest during the turbulent years of self-discovery, but in this case, the boy's cruelty stemmed from a deeper lack of empathy and disregard for others' pain. He posed a significant threat to society and eventually became only the second teenager in French history to receive a life sentence. Anne Marin, born on November 26, 1999, in Paris, was the beloved only child of Paula and Frederick Marin. Growing up in a well-off family, Anne was adored by her parents, who gave her everything she wanted. From a young age, she was pampered with clothes from high-end stores, vacations by the sea, and the latest toys and gadgets. Anne was a lively, social, and creative child, with a passion for music, movies, and dreams of becoming a film director. Academically, she excelled and was recognized for her high potential, though she sometimes struggled with laziness and a lack of focus. However, at age 13, Anne began to associate with a bad crowd, which negatively impacted her studies and behavior. She started smoking, drinking alcohol, and skipping school. Her concerned parents, who avoided using harsh discipline, repeatedly tried talking to her in hopes she would change. Although Anne would promise to improve and distance herself from these negative influences, no real change occurred. Ultimately, her tragic fate was sealed by a classmate whose violent tendencies had gone unchecked for too long. Her death stands as a tragic reminder of the consequences of leniency in cases of severe juvenile delinquency. Caroline Crouch's tragic murder on May 11, 2021, shocked the world. At 4:30 a.m., 3 masked men broke into her home in Athens, Greece, where she lived with her husband, babies, a helicopter pilot, and their 11-month-old daughter. The intruders violently overpowered babies, tying him up and blindfolding him with duct tape. While he lay helpless, they turned their attention to Caroline, demanding money. Despite handing over the couple's life savings, the robbers continued to ransack the home, taking valuables. Their brutality escalated as they strangled the family's husky Roxy before suffocating Caroline with a pillow. She endured a horrifying 6-minute assault before succumbing to her injuries, all while her baby daughter cried nearby. Babies, slipping in and out of consciousness due to the restraints, managed to call for help using his nose to dial the phone. When police arrived, they found the house in disarray and Caroline's lifeless body next to their distressed child. The intruders escaped, leaving behind a scene of devastation, with babies left to mourn his wife and protect their daughter. The case revealed a cruel and calculated crime that shocked Greece and the international community. Caroline Crouch was tragically murdered in a violent home invasion, an event that shocked her community. Initially, the story appeared straightforward. Caroline's husband, Babis, described intruders breaking into their home, attacking them, and murdering Caroline, a trained kickboxer who fought back. Bruises on her body, injuries to her lips and tongue, and the chaotic state of the house suggested a brutal struggle. The intruders stole your $10,000 in cash and your $20,000 worth of jewelry, leading police to believe this was a professional heist. Babis described one of the men as tall, overweight, and dark-skinned, leading police to investigate known criminals, including a Georgian man, Georgi Haraldisvili, who had committed similar burglaries in the area. However, despite being interrogated, Haraldisvili was cleared of involvement. As the investigation progressed, inconsistencies in Babis' account emerged. The supposed point of entry, a small basement window, was too narrow for the intruders, and neighbors reported hearing no struggle. Furthermore, data from Caroline's smartwatch showed her heart stopped well before the time Babis claimed the attack occurred. The house had no trace of fingerprints or DNA, adding to the growing suspicion surrounding Babis. Crucially, the memory card from the home's security camera had been removed hours before the alleged break-in. Babis himself became the primary suspect after fitness data revealed he was moving during the time he claimed to be tied up. Investigators also found evidence that Caroline had been planning to leave him, further casting doubt on his narrative. Eventually, Babas confessed to the murder, revealing that the story of the home invasion was a fabrication to cover up the crime. This shocking revelation changed the course of the investigation and provided some closure to the